Hello, everybody, and you are very welcome to Successful Perspectives. Successful Perspectives, of course, is when we deep dive into the topic of leadership and get to know a leader from our very selective network, Boardroom by EMIR. On this occasion, for this conversation, I am delighted to be joined by my friend, Dr. Saeeda Jaffar, who is the general manager for the GCC at Visa and runs the operations here in the Gulf. Saeeda, it is wonderful to see you. Thank you so much, and you're welcome to Successful Perspectives.
Thank you, Trevor. Thanks for having me.
So I've had the pleasure of getting to know you in recent years, and I've noticed that you have had quite an interesting background in terms of how you've landed in Visa. Maybe you could just give us the beats of your career, the highlights and the journey so far.
It is a true story of what really and truly you find inspiring, and then good things happen. So my background is I'm an engineer, and I landed up being an engineer because I love numbers. I love the logic. I love the way it worked. From the time I left engineering, I went straight into consulting, and I spent almost 17 years in consulting. I had the privilege, the honor, the blessing of being able to work for some of the leading and frankly one of the most impactful consulting firms across the world. So with McKinsey, Bain, and then in my last role at Alvarez and Marcel, and I worked across the region, starting off in the US and then eventually moving back to the region, to GCC. And about a year and a half ago, I left consulting to join the original fintech, as we like to call ourselves. And, it's been a fantastic transition.
For sure. And it's been a fascinating journey for you. And I guess over that time, particularly when, in your last position, but also in the position now, leading significant teams, you've had that benefit of that journey in terms of developing yourself as a leader. How would you define or explain the main tenets of your leadership philosophy when you look at yourself?
So I think leadership starts from within. Each and every one of us is a leader, but we all lead in different ways. We all have different strengths, and we all have different developmental areas. For me, leadership is first and foremost about knowing yourself. If I, as a person, do not know where my strengths lie and where it is that I need to focus on, I cannot do what is needed, which is to create a team. And leadership is about exactly that. Anybody can bring a number of people together and form a group, but that's not leadership. Leadership is about taking that group and creating a team out of it that collectively is that much stronger and performs that much better because they are complementary, and there's that fundamental level of trust and appreciation that drives everyone forward. So really, leadership begins with knowing yourself and then translating that knowledge and working with everybody to create a team that performs as a team.
I absolutely love that answer. And this is one of the reasons why we started this series of conversations, was for me to actually get access to our network and focus on the topic of leadership, because I knew personally this was an area, as the company has grown, this is somewhere that I needed to improve. And I'm embarrassed to say that the answer you gave there, that realization only dawned on me in recent years, or only the last couple of years. And the benefit of doing that in terms of personality assessments for myself and seeing which areas I need to grow in, personality assessments for the team to ensure that we're putting the right people in the right positions and those people match up with our values. That for me personally was a game changer for the business. So I love that answer. In terms of that leadership philosophy and knowing thyself and then building a team around that, do you have an opportunity to sit back and reflect on your leadership philosophy? Or is it a case of that you're obviously on a day-to-day basis trying to deal with 1,000 different things each day?
Look, I think it's a delicate balancing act. And I think pretty much any leader you speak to will probably say the same thing. There are probably 100,000 things that can keep us busy on the day-to-day. Equally, there are 100,000 pressing issues that from a strategic point of view, you need to constantly be thinking about. The challenge is, how do you balance? And not only balance, but how do you prioritize and sequence what you balance on and what you look at? Because the right answer today may be very different than the right answer tomorrow or in 3 months or in 6 months. So it's this constant reassessment. And what I find is I'm far more effective in my role if I take a few minutes just to step back and think about this and conscientiously make the choice around what are the operational items where I need to be involved, and I will be involved on a day-to-day basis, versus what are the broader, more strategic issues that I will be involved on a day-to-day basis, both from a business, but also from a leadership perspective. And I think once you do that level of thinking, and once you kind of set that framework and parameter for yourself, then I think you genuinely are able to be true to yourself and actually be your most effective self, as opposed to just landing and then just boom, it's end of day, and what did I actually do?
Yeah, it's kind of like drinking from a fire hose, with so many things if you're not prioritized in a strategic manner. You mentioned you alluded to the point in your first answer about you feel that everybody can be a leader, but they lead in different ways, right? It was something to that effect. Is your journey on leadership, has it been a very straightforward one in the sense that when, for example, you finish university or even younger, you always felt like I'm a natural born leader? Or has it been a case of I have leadership qualities, but it's something I need to develop within myself?
I think it's a little bit of both. And again, I think this is the case with each and every one of us, right? If you fundamentally focus on what you are passionate about, and that to me is a critical starting point. If you focus on things that you find fulfilling, you will automatically want to spend more time, be more interested, go more in detail. And frankly, you will be able to collate people, and you will be able to drive people to go on the journey with you. I think it becomes a lot more difficult if you're looking at something that you don't genuinely feel passionate about or you don't feel committed to. So I think from a very early age, and this is where, frankly, I think my parents deserve all the credit. They said, figure out what you want to do, figure out what you like. And then once they knew, and once I knew what I liked, they just said, go for it. Right? So again, I'm an engineer, and back in the day, it wasn't the most common path for a woman to be an engineer, but hey, that's okay. That's fine. If that's what you like and that's what you want to do, go for it. And I think from that, many other good things come. But ultimately, it's got to be something that you're passionate about, that you can tap into for yourself. And then the rest comes. And of course, you learn and you grow as you go forward. No one is a finished product, right? Life is a journey. Leadership is a journey. And we learn every step of the way.
And it's a journey that is unknown often, right? It's not until you set out on the journey that you realize the areas that you need to kind of develop on yourself. And particularly also because even the very sense of what a modern leader is or should be is evolving over the last 20 or 30 years naturally. There's a responsibility on you to ensure that Visa in the region is financially successful, so that obviously the business is sustainable and you can go on and have an impact. But there's also a responsibility in terms of for you creating the right culture for the team to thrive as well. And now increasingly, and I know you guys are good at this in Visa, you and I have chatted about this before, there's also then the responsibility in terms of the social impact. So what's your take on that in terms of how important it is for leaders to look at those different areas and how that is evolving?
So I think this is an area where the entire world is going through a bit of a transition. Some parts of the world are a little bit further along in the curve, others are perhaps catching up. But I think we as a society are moving very much in the direction of, it's not about whether I have something or I don't. What does it actually mean? What does it stand for, right? It's the rise of the conscious consumer that a lot has been written about. And I think that element of consciousness seeps into many, many, many of us at different levels. And to be able to make a change and to be able to motivate and engage a society that operates on that conscious level is very different than perhaps how things are done if that's not the case. So I think it's absolutely something that is very critical.
And it's going to test the very nature of what leadership is about over the course of this decade, I feel, which means that many leaders will have to reflect on their leadership philosophy, which brings me to the last question before we move on to our fun segment of our rapid fire round. But when you think over the course of your career, and as you mentioned, you've worked for, some of the best brands in terms of professional services, Visa, obviously a very well respected company as well. What is the best piece of career advice that you would like to share with somebody that perhaps is starting out in their career?
I think the best piece of career advice is listen a lot more than you speak. I think it's just general advice. We
Yeah.
often spend a lot of time just trying to speak either loudly or in our head, right? Let's push that aside and let's really focus on listening to what is being said. Because if we do that, we will really and truly understand what's going on in the world around us, understand the opportunities and the challenges ahead of us, and therefore be able to craft a much, much better and more thoughtful response.
And from a leadership point of view, it allows the people who are working with you to potentially solve some of the problems and grow into a space themselves to figure things out. And then after listening, you can help them along. So yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Saeeda, as always, it's a pleasure to see you. As always, it's a pleasure to garner insights from you. We're very grateful, and it was great to have you on Successful Perspectives.
Thank you. It was great talking to you.
Thank you.